Winter is upon us here in the Midwest, and I needed a place to work that isn't freezing. So I built this workbench that I put in my basement, which is going to allow me to work on things inside all winter. It took me quite a while to build this bench since I am pretty busy usually, but I'm going to take you along here and show you how I got it done. This format is a little different than most of the videos on my channel, but as I said, this build took me quite a while to complete, and I ended up losing some of the audio, so I went this voiceover route instead. I'm setting up my table saw so I can cut the sides for the cabinet, which is going to make up part of the base of this workbench. I'm currently running a 24 tooth 7 1/4 inch blade in this table saw, and that isn't really the right choice for this material. This plywood really likes to have tear out as it's cut, which just leads to a lot of sanding in the end. So hopefully I remember to switch to my higher tooth count blade the next time I use it. Now my table saw only rips about 24 inches total, so I'm going to finish this other cut with my circular saw. Getting the hang of running a circular saw just takes time, and I'm still figuring out how to keep it perfectly level at all times, but this is good enough for what I plan to use it for. I'm now going to set up what's called a story stick. When you have a lot of measurements that all need to be the exact same, just mark them on a board and then use that board to mark all of your pieces. Then you will have consistency across your pieces. After I get all my marks put on there, I ended up using a trim router to cut all of these dados, which the drawer runners will sit in. Having a dado stack in my table saw would probably work pretty well for this, but I don't have one, and I do have a router and a 3/4 inch straight bit, so that's the route that I went, and it ended up working pretty well in this application. The only downfall is it is pretty messy. A quick test fit shows that it fits pretty well. It is a little loose, but I'm going to glue them in anyway, so I just roll with it and cut them all out. Now that I've got my sides cut, as well as a back and a top, I'm going to assemble the carcass of the cabinet. I'm choosing to use a combination of wood glue and brad nails. The brad nails don't really provide any structural support. They're just so I don't have to use clamps. They're going to hold it in place while the glue dries. The glue is going to do most of the holding. I rarely prepare for my glue ups. I mostly just think, well, I want to glue this up. And I grab the pieces and glue and start going, which always ends pretty bad. But in this case, it actually went pretty well. After making several videos on this channel, I've come to realize that trying to talk while I'm recording and building just ends up taking too much time for me, as I don't really have a lot of time already to be building. Just point and shoot, record my work, and talk about it later has ended up being a much better option for me. Here I'm just measuring for my drawers. I'm going to take those measurements and subtract about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch to allow for room for expansion and make it just easier for the boxes to slide in and out. After I got all my pieces cut, just glue them all together with glue and brad nails again, so then I don't have to use any clamps. I've really grown to like processes like assembling these boxes. It's just a lot of repeatable tasks where I can just turn the music on and get some work done. Another perk of just filming hyperlapses and doing voiceovers is I can have my music playing in the background. I never thought about copyright strike before I got into YouTube. All these drawers fit nicely, and you can see they set back a ways from the face of the cabinet. That's so I can put these faces that I'm cutting now on. After plenty of measuring and thinking and scratching my head, I finally figured out the sizes I needed for these faces, and I wanted to make them easy to install, so I ended up being able to set the box and the face flat on the bench and just screw them together. That worked out pretty well for me. I got this method for making handles from Steve Ramsey's channel. You just set your table saw blade at about a 30-degree bevel and cut a piece of scrap here, and then cut them down to just a couple inches in length each. And that ends up making a pretty good handle for any shop project. After I got all my handles cut, I just kind of eyeballed center, used some wood glue, and once again a couple brad nails just to hold it in place, and this will work just fine. And with that, that completes the cabinet for the most part. I did sand it down and wipe it all down with mineral spirits, which really cleans up the look a bit. And I decided to hold up the other end of the bench. I'm just going to cut some legs out of some 2x4s. I'm keeping it pretty simple with these legs and just putting a few screws in to keep them together. After some even more sanding, I just put a little bit of paint on these legs. This is just a rattle can flat black paint. It actually turned out pretty nice in the end. Now it's time to start working on the top, which is going to be a 3/4 inch MDF board that's pre-laminated with a blue and gray laminate, which is only about $13 at my local box store. The only downfall is that the edges of the MDF are exposed, and I want to cover that up with a little bit of material. So I ripped down some 1x4s here into little strips, and I cut some miters so it can fit around the edge. After I got all the pieces cut, you guessed it, more sanding. But once these were all sanded down, glue and brad nails for the win again, and this ended up looking so nice. I used a 45-degree chamfer bit here just to cut off the sharp edge of the face frame. And wow, more sanding? This is a point where my frustration with this build had been building for several weeks. I think I'm on week 6 of trying to complete this project, and like I said, I'm pretty busy. I am a father and a husband, and both of those things always take precedence over everything else. So in order to try and speed this up, I decided I'm just going to take some of these L brackets, screw them into the legs, and screw that into the top, and that should work just fine. Well, it ended up not working fine. These little 2-inch L brackets are nowhere near enough to hold these 33+ inch legs on this table. And you'll see here in a minute how bad it turned out. And here comes the test wobble. And this is me realizing that trying to cut corners really just isn't going to work out in this case. After wobbling the leg back and forth for what felt like 10 years, I ended up just sitting down and thinking about what I wanted to do. That's the sigh of defeat right there. So I did the right thing and just grabbed another L bracket and put in another one, which I'm sure you could guess didn't really fix it much. It's times like this where I'm trying to rush the end of a project that I start making ridiculous mistakes like this. And once I was able to step back from the project and think about it, I realized I could just put a little stretcher piece that connects these two legs together, which pretty much eliminates all of the rocking. I'll end up adding that piece later after this video, but I just wanted to move on for now.
Tell me I did a good job.
Now all I need to do is attach the top to the cabinet over here. I just found some screws that are the perfect length so they won't poke through the top. I really didn't want to have any fasteners visible from the top, which is why I chose to go through the underside here. And it actually ended up working pretty well. Once I got the top fastened to the cabinet, the legs ended up holding up fairly well, but I went back and sturdied them up a little more. And here is where I give it the final wipe down. I feel pretty good. Give it a thumbs up. Nice. Now let's pick up. And just to add insult to injury, I spilled my whole box of screws here on the floor. Kick it across. No, just kidding. Not a big deal. We'll just scoop them all up off the floor, put them back in the box, and move on. One problem that I didn't realize I was going to have was I didn't really think through the height of this workbench. I kind of just picked a number and went with it. But I ended up not having a chair that was the right size. I had either too short or way too tall. This stool was pretty close, but still a little too tall. So what I decided to do, since these are just steel legs, I just took the rubber feet off and cut them down a few inches. While I'm chopping off these legs, I'd like to take a moment to really say thank you to everyone who's been around. This whole process has been such a learning curve for me, not only in the building process, but also with the filming and the editing. It has really been quite challenging to find the video quality that I like. And if anyone has any tips on how to properly color grade, I'm all ears. I also kind of find myself at a fork in the road, whether or not to be funny and entertaining or to be serious and make sense. But I suppose I'll just do both, considering that's really who I am. And with finishing the chair, that completes this build. I really love this bench. I've already used it quite a bit, and I plan to use it a lot more in the future. And you'll be seeing a lot of videos made at this very bench. Got a few videos of the final reveal. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.